had a fair test. I doubt that he would have liked the proof, but others were less sensitive. Trevelyan was well pleased that he had adhered to principle. The laws of classical economics, said he felt, justified themselves. In a reflective letter in 1846, he stated his conclusion. The problem of Ireland, he wrote, being altogether beyond the powers of men, the cure has been applied by the direct stroke of an all-wise providence in a manner as unexpected and as unthought of as it is likely to be effectual. There had always been debate as to the nature of Adam Smith's unseen hand. Trevelyan settled that issue. It was the hand of God. A rather vengeful God, it must be said, who couldn't have been too fond of the Irish. Trevelyan, however, was not exceptional. Men who take a stand on high principle with cruel results have very frequently seen themselves as the instruments of divine will. If, as Trevelyan held, heaven wasn't on the side of the Irish in 1848, where was salvation to be found? It was to be found, but not in Ireland. There was an escape hatch from the Great Hunger, as there had been earlier from the Highland clearances. And that, of course, was the immigrant ship to America. It wasn't an escape from death, because that, too, was a passenger. Many people never made it on the crowded, typhus-ridden vessels. This hospital is on Grosse Ile in the St. Lawrence, a few miles below Quebec. 5,294 people died of the fever, died of typhus, after they arrived on this island. This is the hearse on which they completed their journey. The place names on Grosse Ile recall the history. This placid stretch of water is Cholera Bay. But there was a brighter side. The principles of Adam Smith, Ricardo, Malthus might still be valid in the New World, but the setting was very different. And so, in consequence, were their results. Here, land was abundant and free. And this being so, it conferred no power and no monopoly income on the landlord. No one could exploit a tenant, or for that matter, a farm worker, if one or the other of them could leave next day and get a farm of his own. In America, population might multiply, as Malthus said, but more men were always needed, so the pay was better for that reason, and if it wasn't good enough, there was again the frontier. In the treeless highlands, families had seen the precious roof timbers burned when they were told to go. Now, a few months later, they were hacking farms out of the forest. And now, trees were the enemy. Soon they would be producing more food in a year than their parents had produced in a lifetime. And the refugees from the Great Hunger, the Great Irish Hunger, the Irish construction crews, would be building the railroads that made this food available to the world. Here was the remarkable thing. Malthusian pressure of population on the food supply set in motion the Great Migration. And the migrants then solved the world's food problem. Food would now be abundant for a century. Self-interest, freedom of enterprise, these were a secular faith in the old world. In the new world, they came very close to being a religion. The unseen hand, self-interest, enlightened and otherwise, settled the endless American and Canadian space. Ricardo and Malthus remained in abeyance. Wages rose, population did not press on the food supply, railroads reached out everywhere to bring the food to the cities and to the old world as well. In 1893, Americans gathered in Chicago for the Great Columbian Exposition. It was a celebration of economic success, and they were right to celebrate. For them, the promise and prophecy of classical capitalism, for some so dismal, had taken a wonderfully favorable turn. But even by 1893, some aspects of the triumph were a little in doubt. 1893 itself was a year of depression. Maybe the fair screened a harsher reality. Much less now remains of that certainty. The open spaces no longer reassure, promise wealth to all. Thus our journey.